Welcome to the FiveStack.
I think it's happening right now.
Oh, is it on?
Yeah, it's happening right now.
Is it on? Welcome, everybody. Everybody's streaming in here right now. We're closing in on 100 people. Hi, Kat. Hi, everybody. Hi, nice to see you. Welcome to the FiveStack. My name is Dean Blundell. DeanBlundell.substack.com is where you can find me and some of the stories we're talking about today, as well as our other lead co-host. Please welcome Zev Shalev, investigative reporter extraordinaire and the host of narrative.org. His greatest heist series is maybe some required reading for everybody who wants context about what the is going on. Try not to swear today, so I'm just going to use sounds. What the is going on.
I like that.
You're welcome.
We need a buzzer for you, like a beeper. But
yeah, I know. And I love swearing so much. And I've heard from people that are like, hey, can you cut down the swearing? I'm like, I don't know if I can, but I'm going to try. And we got lots of stuff to get to, but
never change, Dean.
I don't think
you stay the way you are, because that's how people know the show is real and authentic and just us. It's who we are.
I guess so. And we love to follow up with the kind of stories that we're going to follow up today with. We've got a full deck. Zev, well, why don't you give us the quick outline and then we can get started. We've also got a bit of a bonus story at the top that includes an assassination attempt. So feel free to go straight into it, my man.
All right, there's a lot of Epstein stuff coming. There's a lot of stuff about the Judge Breyer's blocking the military deployment to LA. That's all coming up. But first, the story from, that's really hit us all is the story about European Commissioner President Ursula von der Leyen's aircraft forced to make a manual landing using paper maps at an airport in Bulgaria over the weekend after GPS navigation systems were allegedly jammed, suspected by Russian interference operations. The incident occurred during von der Leyen's official tour of the EU frontline states and represents the latest escalation by Russia. I mean, this is really... I'm sure they've tried it before, but this is an unheard of thing in the recent times where they've tried to assassinate the leader of the president of the European Commission. Yeah, that really is what this is. This is putting in grave danger. This is no joke.
Absolutely. It happened over the weekend. This is kind of breaking news. So if everybody kind of sticks with, we will kind of give you the, the Coles Notes tour of what happened this weekend. But President of the EU, lady named Ursula von der Leyen, she is much ballyhooed. She is a rock. She keeps the EU together. She's an incredible woman, very, very bright, absolute leader with a capital L. Flying this weekend, and as you know, when you fly, your tail number or your identification number is available to any aviation nerd or any country that has the ability to, see flight paths. And Russia jammed the electronics on her plane, and they had to manually take it over and landed an emergency landing in Bulgaria. Bulgarian authorities informed Mrs. van der Leyen that it was indeed Russia that jammed her plane's electronic navigation system. Absolutely EMP'd it, took it right out. That wasn't the only thing that happened this weekend in terms of Russia trying to assassinate anybody in their way. High-ranking, in fact, the highest-ranking German military general, his name is Carsten Brewer. That has happened to him twice in the past 5 days, both over Baltic countries, where they had to make an emergency landing because Russia... Now, this is according to German intelligence. Russia jammed his plane in an attempt to try to assassinate him as well. So we have two active investigations going on into Russia actively trying to assassinate world and military leaders that stand between them and rolling over the European Union. It is truly a 12-alarm blaze. Giorgia Meloni, who's the president of Italy, basically said, hey, we're going to hide our planes from now on, our diplomatic planes, whether it's me or anybody else from the government. Several other EU governments are now taking measures to also ghost their planes as well, because Russia is actively targeting flight paths and flights that include EU leaders, military leaders that are unfriendly to Russia's efforts to take over Ukraine. And they're trying to assassinate EU leaders as we speak. So put that in your fucking geopolitical pipe and smoke it today. I mean, that's a big one.
Think about that as a weapon. They've been able to jam GPS systems for a long time, and it's only the Russians really that have figured it out, maybe the Chinese too. There's lots of questions as to when they've used it in the past. The questions around the naval collisions that we had in sort of 2016. If you remember those two American naval carriers crashed into each other because of GPS spoofing, created by Russia. This is when they were testing the same kind of thing. But now to think of them doing it at this level, where you've got people doing it on to planes coming in, which of course, need their GPS systems to land. Otherwise, they've got to turn to paper, which is far more complicated in busy
Oh, you got
airports.
to get out your protractor and your fucking ruler, and you got to like draw a straight
Complicated.
line. Yeah, old school. They had to go old school on that plane. Yeah.
And the reality of it is, the even non-famous people or just regular planes flying into Estonia, now almost all the flights flying into Estonia require paper navigation to land, that they're jamming so much GPS. This is unconscionable. I mean, this is really the kind of terror that Russia likes to push across the world in the way that they just project power without ever hurting themselves and without ever facing any of the consequences. It's really a tragic turn of events and another example of where Russia's just getting allowed to do whatever it wants to do without real consequences. And of
Yeah.
course, not to mention the fact that over the last few days, we've watched this Putin, Xi, Kim Jong-un, Iran celebration and Modi celebration now.
The
taking
hugging,
place
the
in-
kissing, the
yeah,
hand holding.
yeah.
Lev and I were talking about it. I mean,
Oh,
you're legitimately watching the butterfly effect of the vacuum of not having a legitimate leader as the president of the United States.
Yeah.
Right? You're watching the dictatorial world, the axis of evil, literally celebrate hugging each other. Modi and Putin holding hands, laughing, talking, walking down the red carpet, meeting Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping at the end of the red carpet, and they're all giggling and laughing like, we got it. We
Yeah.
got it. And so are they afraid of a response from the United States? Absolutely fucking not. Which is why they tried to assassinate the leader of the EU, which is why they tried to assassinate Major General Carsten Brewer over the weekend, the highest ranking German military official, twice. It's why we are seeing 528 Shahed drones and ballistic missiles thrown into Kyiv and different parts of Ukraine yesterday. It is why Vladimir Putin is allowed to run around and act like a fucking loser, brat, genocidal maniac dictator that he is. Because there is nobody to hold him accountable in the world. Like the closest thing we have to it is Mark Carney.
And you got to believe.
Go ahead.
No, I just got to believe the Van der Leyen is, by the way, also German. So you've got another German person there who's being attacked. The Musk is back on about the ultra right in Germany. There's new ultra right protests in Germany, obviously fanned by Russia. You can bet that Putin was gloating about Van der Leyen's flight to Xi and to Modi in China over the last few days. But what really is going on in a much bigger contextual way is an attack on Germany to try and force Merz to resign, to try and kill his ex-coalition government, and also to really, dampen the support for any Ukraine intervention.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing it in real time. And I think all these events, when you look at them together, are actually quite frightening that, this assault is happening on Germany, which is perfectly entitled to do everything it's doing right now. But, there's just no respect for the rule of law or international borders anymore.
No, and you know what? These are the drips that happened before the flood, if you will, right?
Yeah.
The drips of attempted assassinations, the drips of dictators getting together, drip, 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 drip. And it all ends the same way. It ends with a torrential downpour of authoritarianism in some type of world war.
Mm-hmm.
That's why this is so serious for so many people. Bulgarian security literally came out at an EU meeting and said, here's what happened. The president of the EU was targeted for assassination by KGB, FSB agents who jammed her plane. And then they released information that they were sharing with the Baltics that they did the exact same thing to this German general. And to your point, Germany is a bulkhead for the EU at this point in time. They are flooding Ukraine with as much ammunition, with as much military support and aid for Ukraine as they possibly can, while trying to rebuild their military. And Mark Carney just signed a huge deal with Friedrich Merz last week for raw materials, rare earth materials, and manufacturing of military equipment, which will take place between both countries. So Canada's sort of at the forefront of this at the same time.
Yeah.
And we're also living next to it. But to that point, this drip is going to quickly become a dam bursting, and you're going to see a much wider skirmish. And it scared me to the point, I'm not often scared Like, I kind of understand. I got everything in front of me. I understand it. I'm not scared by the content we do. I know a lot of people that'll watch this Substack live or our lives, the ones that you did with Waj or the ones that I did with Lev today, get really turned off or upset or overwhelmed at the idea that there could be a wider implication here. But I'm telling you, Lev laid it out for me today. The EU and different EU countries are warning hospitals. They're putting their military on notice that something much bigger is coming, and we're just seeing the precursor to what that might be.
Yeah, we're heading into a world war. I think that's just the consensus around the world. That's where we're heading into. Something might stop that, but there's nothing obvious right now when you look at the narrative that's laid out in front of us that's going to stop this war. I mean, Trump has consolidated power in America. He's going to continue to be as fascistic as he can be. Even if he's not there, it'll be Vance who will do exactly the same. And, the Democratic Party is not really putting up any challenge, any foreseeable challenge against this. And the resistance movement has been quiet. It's not been the typical kind of resistance movement that you'd expect at the start of a fascist government, which means there's sort of consent by the American people that this is where they want to go. And if this is where they're going to go, it ultimately leads to world war because that's what Putin wants to do next. He does want to reclaim all of the Soviet Union and the countries who lost in the Soviet Union. That means further invasion into Western Europe and then ultimately Eastern and Western Europe. And ultimately that triggers NATO and all sorts of uncomfortable things happen, especially when half of NATO doesn't want to fight with the rest of NATO. A significant part of NATO doesn't want to fight with the rest of NATO because they're on Putin's side. I mean, that's just one scenario which directly takes you into world war.
Can we also, just allay the fact that North Korea is currently in Ukraine, China is currently in Ukraine, Iran is currently in Ukraine,
Yeah.
a couple of African countries, Libya currently has mercenaries in Ukraine. This is to some extent a world war, but to that point, this is a dry run for the rest of Europe. This is a dry run for Poland. This is a dry run for Finland, Latvia, Moldova. This is a dry run for Transnistria. This is a dry run for all of those bordering countries that
Even
connect
Finland.
to Ukraine, Finland, Poland, Hungary. I mean, like Sweden. This is not. This is the preparation for preparation. That's what we're watching right now. And if you talk to any military experts or you follow any mill bloggers, they're all saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Is that the attempted assassination of the president of the European Union isn't just an escalation, it's a declaration that they're coming.
And if you're going to be doing that in Europe, don't think that war is going to stay in Europe like World War II or World War I. That war is going to come to the United States because of Canada and the Greenland situation. You expect, and even Venezuela now, there's war drums around Venezuela. There's war drums around the cartels in Mexico that Trump is going to invade those countries, and it could be imminent that those invasions. People aren't even covering those stories. They seem so minimal. But you got all these things happening at the same time. This war is not going to be a world war that just stays on the European continent. It's coming home to North America.
100% correct. Sorry. The nice little bonus story to start with.
That was a bonus story. That was
sorry, guys.
5. Good one to throw in there. All right. So number 5 is also a breaking news story today. U.S. District Judge Charles Breyer has ruled that President Trump's deployment of 4,000 National Guard troops and 700 Marines to Los Angeles violated the Posse Comitatus Act, the 1878 law that prohibits using military forces for domestic law enforcement. The ruling stems from immigration protests earlier this summer and grants California Governor Gavin Newsom an injunction against such federal military deployments. However, its decision has been stayed until September 12th because there'll be an appeal and there'll be another appeal. Who knows where this will end? In the meantime, Donald Trump is saying he's going into Chicago. What are your thoughts on all of this?
My thoughts are we always knew it was illegal. Posse Comitatus is a law. It's a 150-year-old law in the United States that prevents, just so you understand it prevents any dictator like Donald Trump from using the military against its citizens. Very, very, very simple. Anywhere that this is happening, and which is the importance of ICE, by the way, and we'll get to that in just a second. Importance of these unnamed, unmasked goons that go around because he can militarize a certain police force, but he can't use the military as a police force.
Right.
So very, very important distinction with a difference, if you will, or difference with a distinction, however you say it. Distinction with a difference. That's the one I was looking at. Yep, I got it.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
I think
Crushed it. Running away with it now.
Well done.
Thank you very much. No, I always try to get to the right
Distinction with the difference.
I know. Distinction with a difference.
Yeah.
And so what we're seeing now is Donald Trump use courts as Roy Cohn taught him to use courts, which is deny, deflect, appeal, do anything you can. The problem that they're having is they don't have anything on Justice Breyer. He is a absolute legal genius. He is a completely spotless record. I believe he's a Clinton appointee, but it doesn't matter. He is unbiased and he judges according to the law. Now, I'm going to read you a couple of things that Justice Breyer put in this decision today.
Sure.
Which, by the way, it's this decision is stayed till December. The tariff decision that happened last week, where they ruled all the tariffs illegal. By the way, Trump is losing everywhere, and he's trying to keep these losses and a pin in these losses or cover these losses with, oh, we're just going to appeal, we're just going to appeal. But that's the Roy Cohn game plan. That's what he does. That's what he taught him to do. And but I'm going to read you a couple of different clips, a couple of different excerpts from Justice Breyer's decision. And these are really, really important to kind of understand that the legal system in the United States is very well aware of what Donald Trump is trying to do to the citizens of the United States. He ruled that President Trump's deployment of the military to Los Angeles violated the Posse Comitatus Act. He said that Trump is, quote, using the military as a national police force with the president at its chief. And then they granted the injunction. The interesting part here, remarkable scene in Breyer's footnote, National Guard Major General Scott Sherman objected to Trump's admin plan for a show of force in MacArthur Park and tried very hard to not get Trump to use the military in L.A. A Trump political appointee named Gregory Bovino responded by questioning Sherman's loyalty to the country to not carry out Trump's illegal act. So the National Guard of the military have been counseling Trump the entire time. We can't do this. We can't do this. And then Trump gets a political appointee to go and dress down career service officials to say, if you're not on our side, we're just going to fucking get rid of you. And Justice Breyer also in his decision made sure to note, and this is really important, that he said you intentionally tried to activate the military against its citizens where no emergency existed and none was warranted. So he's now appealed this again. By the way, this is the third appeal of this ruling. He's now appealed it again, and this decision came after the last appeal, and he doesn't have any appeals left after this. He's going to try and park this until December so he can continue to do this. California has just put in their request to squash the appeal, saying, how many fucking times do you need a federal court judge to tell you that what you're doing is illegal according to the Posse Comitatus Act and the Constitution of these United States of America? So now we're set up for a big fight between California and Donald Trump yet again. But yes, to your point, illegal. It's illegal everywhere, by the way, including D.C.
And Chicago, which is still where he tends to send the ICE, brigade on as early as this week, maybe. Pritzker is saying they don't want them there, although I think they'll allow the ICE operations to take place. What they don't want to do is allow the deployment of National Guard troops from other states in Illinois, which makes complete sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and Chicago's an interesting one because the mayor, Brandon, I can't remember his last name.
Oh.
Folks, chime in if you know the mayor's name of Chicago. Brandon,
he's great,
something. Yeah, young dude, 46.
Yeah.
Held a rally this weekend. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 75 to 100,000 Chicagoans showed up to this rally. It was the Keep Trump's Troops Out of Our City rally. And you had not just clergy, you had local police, local representatives, city representatives, state representatives show up to support the mayor. And the mayor basically said, you try to send those cats here, we're going to turn them right the fuck around. So, pardon my French. Not really, because it's just me. But we're going to turn them around. And J.B. Pritzker has said the same thing. And there's an interesting footnote here. Every state in the United States has the constitutional right and ability to start something called State Defense Forces, SDFs, to do what federal enforcement wants to do instead of federal enforcement so that they can keep the enforcement of whatever action the government wants that state to contribute to. They can keep that in-house. Part of this governor's alliance, which is really fascinating, is the enactment and the buildup of this state defense force group. And there are now 17 different states that are actively looking into either activating a state defense force or are trying to table a motion to be able to activate a state defense force. So that's heavily talked about and being activated in Chicago as we speak. Same thing in Los Angeles, so that they can control what Trump wants to do in their states instead of Trump walking into their states, creating chaos where there is none, telling the world that this is too dangerous of a state and he's got to send the National Guard in. Among other key references, these state defense forces would accompany immigration people. And by the way, none of these people in these states, specifically state defense forces, are allowed to cover their faces. They have to have their nameplates and badges.
Good.
They have to be absolutely accountable. And so J.B. Pritzker, Gavin Newsom, several other governors are currently working on implementing SDFs in
really
these
good
blue
idea.
states and cities. I think it's a brilliant.
It really counters the National Guard's usefulness in those situations. They don't need to deploy them.
Sure does.
Brandon Johnson is the mayor of Chicago.
There you
by
go.
the way.
Thank you. Yes.
Story number 4. President Trump vanished from public view for nearly 5 days before resurfacing with a pronounced ankle swelling and frequent bruising, a slow left foot dragging gait, and the telltale slack jaw, open mouth posture visible in candid shots. This is direct quote from your
Looks like a
great
sex doll.
Substack.
Yeah.
He looks, poor guy, you know. I mean, he's old, and I feel sorry for him because he's old.
What?
And he's dying. I mean, I just don't wish death on anybody. I just don't wish death on anybody.
You and I are different.
Yeah, I know you and I are different, but tell us what's going on. He's back. Looks like he's in fine shape. I think there's a little bit of fake faux narrative being built over the weekend to lend us some sympathy for Donald Trump ahead of the Epstein announcement tomorrow.
I completely agree. I mean, there's a real victim narrative around something that's wrong with Donald Trump. I just posted on my Substack notes. You can go and have a look at it. A clip of Uber ass licker Scott Jennings, the CNN Trump acolyte, having a conversation with Trump this morning, and he put the audio out. You have to listen to it.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
He sounds fucking terrible. If not for all the other health issues which are widely documented, which he's admitted to, which you know is the tip of the health concern iceberg where Donald Trump is concerned, if not for those things, if not for the swollen ankles, cankles, if not for the edema, if not for the giant red face, if not for the rotting hands and the terrible bruises and the slow gait and the straight left leg walk, and if not for the diapers and the catheters, if not for all those things, go and watch and listen to Donald Trump talk. Yeah. He sounds like he's had pneumonia for a month and he's barely out of it, or he's just coming out of it. He is so low energy. He is so gravelly that not seeing this guy for 5 days, listening to that, knowing how unwell he is, and then knowing how important it is to Donald Trump. Lev and I kind of glossed over this today. To control the news cycle, disappearing for 5 days is not part of the Trump MAGA playbook, kids.
No, they don't do this.
Yeah.
But so something happened to him over the last 5 days. I mean, he obviously had some sort of procedure or something that, not obviously, but something must have been, something took him out of commission for 5 days. And he did not look well. He looked particularly bad over the weekend. So even though he wasn't dying, I think they were boosting this dying narrative. They were suggesting he may die because it helps, the favorability ratings. It helps the empathy towards him. But on the other hand, I think something did go on with him. And I don't think they're telling us the truth again.
About
his health.
Dude, you know what? Think about that for a second, because I completely agree with you. Again, this is IMO, in my opinion, but I completely agree with you. Consider what you just said.
Yeah.
That they're playing around with the narrative about the president of the United States dying or being dead.
Yeah.
Like that was the number one trending 2 words put together in a hashtag, Trump dead, right? His death. To distract you from the fucking Epstein files, victim press conference tomorrow. Do you know how sick that is?
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's very sick, but it's not unusual for these kinds of leaders. We're talking with Olga Lautman last hour. She says that Putin has been dying since 2001, since he took office. Every time before he invades a country, he gets some disease, and he's almost on his deathbed every single time. And she's been monitoring the many deaths of Vladimir Putin. So maybe we'll have many deaths of Donald Trump as well. This is just what they do. It's strategy, because when you run an unpopular government and you run a fascist regime, what are you going to do? You're going to have to create narratives to create some sort of sympathy or humanity around you, because you're not being either of those things.
None. Zero. And that's such a great point. And I wouldn't put it past him to gin up a whole thing about how sick he is or how he's dying. And by the way, he did look terrible this weekend. There is something wrong with him. And to lean into what you said, just to add credence to it, there is a rumor out there, and Lev's sources are bulletproof. He talked about it in our weekend roundup today, which, by the way, you can go and download and subscribe to anytime you want. Weekend roundup, deanblundell.substack.com. That he indeed did have a medical procedure over the past 5 days at some point. There were more substantiated rumors that Walter Reed, roads in front of Walter Reed Hospital were closed for a period of time over the weekend. Melania made a trip, a clandestine trip to Washington, D.C. over the weekend. So we're not hearing anything, because the only thing that matters to Trump is the idea that he's tough, the idea that he's strong, the idea that he's going to live forever, and he ain't. That is a very sick man. It is the signpost of every dictatorial regime too, right? Guy's never going to die. He's in the greatest health. So when, Father Time comes for Donald Trump, and it looks like Father Time is at the door going, hello, hello, hello. You're not going to get the straight goods about any of this stuff from the regime.
Can you imagine J.D. Vance throughout all of this? He must have been just
so
delighted.
Stoked.
He must have been so delighted at the possibility that he could be president.
Peter Thiel and Elon Musk in his ear going, "You're almost up, dude. This is what we groomed you for. This is what we gave you millions in VC money for. This is why we put you on boards and retrained you to be a fascist dickhead incel. It's almost your time, fella."
And he's going to so screw up that moment. I can just guarantee it. He's just every indication of how he handles these things.
I'm actually looking forward to it.
Yeah, he's going to go too far, too fast, or something. I don't know. It'll be fast.
He has literally the charisma of a turd. Like he literally does. He's got the charisma of something you find at the bottom of a fucking outhouse at a festival that's been 4 days going. Like, he is not funny. He is not interesting. He plays himself off as this guy that he's not. So, watching Donald Trump pretend he's someone he's not will pale in comparison to this slack-jawed, couch-humping loser that has the personality of literally feces. Literally.
I mean, people like to watch Trump because they're interested in what he's doing, because it's just he's got such a it's an accident waiting to happen that you're watching. But J.D. Vance, no one is clamoring to watch any of his press conferences or anything like that. It'll just be boring as anything. So you're absolutely right about that. Speaking about the Epstein files, the number 3 story, Rep. Thomas Massey is filing his discharge petition this afternoon. He probably has filed it already to bypass GOP leadership and force the release of Jeffrey Epstein's DOJ files, with bipartisan support from Democrat Ro Khanna that virtually guarantees they'll get the 218 signatures needed. Speaker Mike Johnson held an emergency weekend call with Rules Committee Republicans trying to contain the rebellion, while GOP leaders scrambled to post a toothless alternative resolution. But it looks like Massey will win in this one, and it looks like Massey and Khanna will get this resolution passed, which means we will see the Epstein files. I mean, this is real possibility that we'll see the unredacted files. I'll say real possibility because I don't think it's going to happen, but it's possible.
Either.
Yeah,
I don't either, and I get jacked up every time someone's like, "Oh, they've got a motion for it. They're going around the GOP. Oh, they forced a vote. They won 8-2." And you remember when Summer Lee and Congressman Gallego, came out of the Oversight Committee meeting, and they were holding their fists up, and they're like, "We're getting the files. We got an 8-2 majority vote in House Oversight, and we're going to see the files." And do you remember what they delivered?
Yeah.
They delivered files that everybody already had.
Yeah.
97% everybody had, part of the public record. So they tried to rug the Oversight Committee. Rep. Mo Khanna, who might be joining us tomorrow from what I understand, and Thomas Massey have done absolutely incredible work on behalf of the victims to get not only the victims to show up tomorrow, but also to continually bark up this tree to get these files, pulling out every available trick in their book so that Americans can have transparency around the worst pedophile sex trafficking ring it may be in the history of the fucking world, not just the United States. So combined with that, we've got a press conference tomorrow morning where the number of victims, Epstein, Maxwell victims, possibly Trump victims, other victims involved in the child trafficking, sex pedophile ring, the rape ring, that number is now closer to 20 than 10. And you're getting a bunch of women, courageous, courageous women that are going to come forward, show their faces, and tell their stories tomorrow at around 10:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
And
We're
we're
keeping
going
it
to,
live here on Narrative as well. So I
yeah,
don't know if you're going to be able to join us for that. We've got a whole other event that was planned, but I'm not sure that's all going to come to fruition. But we'll certainly carry the event tomorrow at 10:30 and some other additional programming around it.
yeah,
I think it's important that everyone pays attention to this. This is not just a human trafficking story, but it is a human trafficking story. And it's so important these victims get an opportunity to speak out, especially because of the injustice of Ghislaine Maxwell's interview with Todd Blanche the other day. I mean, which was so egregious and so inhumane and so lacking empathy. Speaking of lacking empathy, that, these women deserve an opportunity to respond and to get the full public light on everything that they say. So I hope everyone tunes in tomorrow morning at 10:30, and I hope there's just an amplification of all this content that is going to come out tomorrow. And I hope it shakes Donald Trump's world, because it should shake Donald Trump's world, because there's no doubt in my mind that he was one of the people involved in that ring. And in more. I mean, we won't get to the financial crimes tomorrow, but for sure, the human trafficking events that took place, I think those are indisputable, and they obviously involve Donald Trump.
yeah, yeah. I'm preparing for mayhem tomorrow. Is the second we all know Ghislaine Maxwell's guilty. We all know Jeffrey Epstein's guilty. We all know there is a child trafficking pedophile ring that these two ran. And we also know that Donald Trump's name is all over them. He's had over 1,000 FBI agents go through over 100,000 different documents to rinse his information from the Epstein files. But there might be a moment tomorrow when someone who had an experience with Donald Trump talks about that experience, names names, and his might be one of them. That is going to be a enormous sigh of relief for victims, for the United States of America, and it will be a moment that will define American history post Donald Trump. Provided that, and here's the other thing. This is really, really important. Donald Trump kept a low profile this weekend for a number of reasons. One is he's unhealthy and had a procedure. Two, if you know him, guy with COVID that did the old salute and got the helicopter ride back from Walter Reed when he had COVID and he had like a breathing apparatus. He never misses an opportunity to insert himself so he can change the news cycle, or at least blunt the news cycle, especially if there's bad news coming. None of that today, because there's no answers. There's no answers when victims stand up and they tell you about their experience. And these victims and their experiences were horrific and visited upon them as children. So tomorrow promises to be a very sad day, a very cathartic day for victims of sexual abuse, specifically at the hands of the patriarchy. And I'm really, really looking forward to hopefully watching a couple dozen victims of a decades-long crime visited upon young girls and young boys. I'm hoping that they get to breathe a sigh of relief, and I'm hoping every victim of sexual violence tomorrow watches this and feels courageous to go and live their lives and tell their truth as well. There's more to this than the politics of what's going on around it. There's the emotional, empathetic part of this, which if you're not human unless you address that, specifically around the sexual abuse of women. And watching women stand up to Donald Trump like we did last week with Lisa Cook and the CDC president, or the head of the CDC, and watching other women stand up to Donald Trump. Tomorrow, I hope, is a great day. I hope it's a wonderful day for women. I hope it's a healing day for women who've experienced sexual abuse at the hands of the patriarchy, or some rich asshole who just thought that he could take a woman's innocence from them, or a young girl's innocence from them, because he was entitled to. Because that is Donald Trump. And that is what he represents.
Yeah.
So I hope tomorrow is an incredibly powerful day for women.
And Rep Khanna and Rep Massey have done a terrific job here. Honestly, this is the first time we've seen anyone stand up to the regime in the way that they have. And this is a great day that they're put together, and a great event today that they were able to get this ruling through, or this vote through. This is our story number 2, which ties into this. And I found it fascinating. It comes from your story about the other Epstein story that's going to come up a little later, about the files that they have on Donald Trump. But you also write about how the Kremlin operates, how the Kompromat playbook works. And it's really fascinating to me. I've obviously studied this for a long time, and I was fascinated by what you talked about there. Can you run us through that? Can you talk about, the doctrine that they have of compromising people? It's not just about fabrication, it's about situational capture. It's about all these terms most people have not heard, like swallows and ravens. And tell us a little bit more about how that all works.
Yeah, I mean, leaning into the Epstein thing, and you talk about it so eloquently, and you always reorient people when it comes to what Epstein was doing. Honeypotting world leaders, powerful businessmen, captains of industry with underage girls is specifically a very, very serious KGB tactic,
Yeah.
right? And they label different useful idiots that they want to honeypot. Donald Trump being one of them. Now, the interesting part here in this story, and I would encourage everybody to go read it. It's over at my Substack, deanblundell.substack.com. The interesting part of this story is how it fits so perfectly with what Jeffrey Epstein did.
Mhm.
The allegation is from a former KGB agent who is legitimate, Alner Musayev, I believe is his name.
Yeah, correct.
Kazakh former financial KGB agent who flipped, went to the United States, and now is singing like a bird. He was the guy that pointed out that we knew there was a Russian KGB FSB operation to bring Trump over to our side as a useful idiot back in 1986. We call him Agent Krasnov. You may remember that name from other stories. Krasnov is Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And he went into how detailed, how perfect the KGB honeypotting machine is,
Mhm.
and the actual program that they've been running. And it was an exact replica of what we're talking about with the Epstein crimes. And
That's
the
why I found
Epstein
it so
files.
fascinating. So talk about these terms. What kind of, when you say it's a replica, this was a model that they'd created in Russia to keep a lot of the technocrats in place. They would basically honeypot them, trap them in all sorts of situations, and then have the videos there when they needed to control them.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what Epstein did. And it's really interesting that no one had done this in the United States really before Epstein. It was sort of an Epstein. He brought it over from the KGB, which, another indicator that he's connected to Russia. And I've got more on that coming up in the Greatest Heist coming up today, which also tied Trump to Russia. And it's a really fascinating chapter coming out today. But tell us a little bit more about how the operation works in the reality of it.
Yeah, it's really simple. It's you go and find someone who's greedy, who's got a sexual appetite and a god complex, and you turn that person. Doctrine from the KGB called Kompromat, specifically sex-based. They've been doing this since the Cold War. It's not always about fabricating. It's also about situational capture, providing opportunity, ensuring surveillance, owning the material. In Russian slang, swallows are female officers or assets. Ravens are male targets. So they send a swallow to get in touch with male targets. A really specific example that you might remember, Maria Butina. Do you remember that name?
Of course.
Trump's first run?
How could you forget?
He was
Maria.
a very high-ranking swallow that captured several GOP men in her honeypotting trip. She gave them sex. She gave them money. She infiltrated the IRA. She was a swallow that captured several ravens. She did time in the United States, was then returned to Russia, where she now has a plum job in the FSB as a spokesperson and a trainer, teaching people, other swallows, how to capture American ravens and ravens from around the world. Yeah.
I thought she was a member of their Duma, but maybe she's also, maybe she's got this
maybe
job
both.
too.
Who knows?
Yeah, could be.
Yeah.
Could
Don't
be
believe
both.
anything. But it's fascinating, and it is the exact replica of what happens with Epstein. How Epstein got women close to Trump. Epstein got women close to captains of industry, political leaders, powerful people, compromise them, videotape them, because that was the goal: surveillance, catch them in a compromising position. Because if you remember when they picked up Butina, Russia's like, yeah, everybody does it. We sent her over there.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, also to control policy. I mean, not just that they have these honeypots and they try to capture them and they try to get them to commit crimes on camera, is that they want to absolutely control policy. And in this case, what Epstein started was about Middle East policy, Israeli Middle East policy, not wanting him to lean too far towards the Palestinians
Yeah.
is why this all began. Now, this all leads to the story number one. It's an unusual story, number one, but it's tied to the same story. It's the same story. Alner Musayev, the former KGB officer and ex-head of the Kazakhstan security service, has resurfaced with this explosive new claims that the Kremlin maintains a deep, authenticated Kompromat file on Donald Trump, containing financial records tied to Trump affiliates and sexual materials allegedly involving violence and minors, not for demolition, but as calibrated pressure systems to keep Trump aligned with Russia's interest. So we've known for a long time that there's a lot of compromise on Trump. We've often thought it was sexual because we've been led to believe that there's that sexual interaction at that hotel in Moscow. But there is much more that Musayev is saying that they have.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about what they've got and what they claim they have, because he still lives there. He's still in Russia.
Yeah. He's he dropped a bomb last week. If anybody doesn't follow Michael Sellers, he's an intelligence guy on Substack. He wrote a great piece about this, and I took the piece, matched it up with some different information, and tied the Epstein stuff into it, which you can go and read the entire thing. But apparently, Russia has a 35-year file on Donald Trump, and to your point, it's not meant as a kill shot. It's not meant to demolish the man. It is meant to keep him in fucking line, which explains every receipt we've seen from Donald Trump's capitulation to Vladimir Putin and the terrorist state of Russia. Every single thing. This file apparently has videos, pictures, still pictures, videos, CCTV of Donald Trump on several trips to Russia, also in New York, in certain clubs, with underage girls and women of age, where he is violently sexually assaulting them. Violently. Musayev co-signed that today. Said, yeah, it all exists. I know it exists. I know people that have seen it. I've seen the file. I don't know how much thicker the file is, but it is a certainty that Vladimir Putin has a file on Donald Trump that includes horrific abuses of women. Horrific.
And what he's also going to have is obviously these financial dealings. And the greatest heist, a chapter I'm putting out later today, goes back to the bankruptcy of Donald Trump in 1996. In 1991, he sort of became bankrupt over a couple of years. And then he had this huge financial crisis, and then came back in 1996 with $450 million. And then suddenly back on the Forbes richest list. No one's ever really focused on that particular bizarre amount of money that suddenly showed up. Hey, Donald Trump out of bankruptcy, here's $450 million. But I'm doing it in tonight's greatest heist. And it's pretty clear to me that money came from Russia. And not only Russia, but from Jeffrey Epstein. So we're going to tie all that together in this explosive chapter that comes out later today. I hope everyone takes the time to read it. It really leans in on the kind of control that Putin has over Trump, that he really owns the guy. It's not just that he has influence over him. He is Donald Trump. He's possessed Donald Trump. All the money that Donald Trump has in the world is Vladimir Putin and Russia's money, because of course Putin wasn't that big a deal back then because he wasn't the leader then. But certainly this is an effort by Russia to co-opt these guys, to co-opt people like Donald Trump, and it's worked. It's worked so damn well for them that he's now the president of the United States.
Yeah, and consider this: Jeffrey Epstein, before his death, told Michael Wolff, his biographer, that indeed Putin was one of his clients. So, we don't have to look around. Everything's publicly available to that point. This is what Donald Trump is running from, in my opinion. If you ask any intelligence officer, ask the fucking president of Portugal, who on the weekend came out and he's like, Is there any other alternative other than the fact that Donald Trump is a Manchurian candidate and an asset of Russia? Is there any alternative? Things will
Nothing.
start to move forward for the free world when guys like Mark Carney say it, Anthony Albanese, Ursula von der Leyen, other world leaders, Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron, when they tip that scale and they say, there's no alternative, we see. Because if you don't think that these countries have an inkling as to what Russia has on Donald Trump, you're crazy.
No.
You're crazy.
You know, he also has Ukraine has a good inkling on what exactly they have on Donald Trump. And, you know, the latest attacks on Ukraine, again, overnight, I think another 23 people dead, I think. You know, this is
548 drones and ballistic missiles. 27 got through, 24 people killed, and dozens more injured.
It's so unforgivable. And of course, we could stop those deaths every day because the United States has the weapons. The United States has the ability to stop that war from happening every day, the deaths from happening every day. But we're allowing it to take place. And there's an emergency now meeting called for both NATO and the UN. And I hope these meetings get attention, and I hope that something gets done to support Ukraine and stop Putin from continuing this really unforgivable war that he's prosecuting against the Ukrainian people. And if they need to call out Donald Trump as his puppet or lackey or whatever they want to do in order to get that through, well, so be it. That's exactly what he is.
Yeah, and that's the only way that we're going to get movement from this bulkhead or the idea that Donald Trump is legitimate leader of the United States of America. He is not. He is absolutely not. And if the free world were to grow a spine, you know, I watched Mark Carney, our prime minister, and I say it daily. Thank God he's our prime minister. And I think Americans say it all the time. And I think Ukrainians say it all the time. Thank God Mark Carney is on the scene. You know, I watch him eviscerate Vladimir Putin on Independence Day of Ukraine. Eviscerate him. Call him what he is. I haven't heard any of that from Donald Trump, not once. On the weekend, he's like, "Yeah, I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed in Putin. I thought we always have good talks. I'm disappointed." Mark Carney doesn't talk to Putin. Mark Carney just calls him what he is, which is a terroristic dictator who's committing genocide in Ukraine against the Ukrainian people, as are other EU member states, France, Germany, Poland, Spain. There's so many countries that are like, hey, call it what he is. But until they start doing that with Donald Trump, things are not going to get any better.
Yeah.
The second that world leaders, military leaders, turn on that man, we're going to see a very different set of circumstances in North America. You're going to start seeing Donald Trump shit his pants, if he already isn't, ahead of tomorrow's Epstein victims press conference at 10:30. And that's what I hope for. I hope that guys like Mark Carney, Albanese, Starmer, Macron call a fucking press conference and say, hey, Donald Trump is a Russian asset. He is persona non grata to allied nations, and we need to treat him as such, and America needs fucking help. SOS ASAP.
And Putin. I mean, they're not putting enough pressure on Putin. And this performance in China of the weekend, I mean, China should be absolutely admonished for having Vladimir Putin, a war criminal, there and being celebrated in the way he was. Kim Jong-un, who's a dictator of the worst notoriety there. I mean, this is who they're hoping
the Iranian president.
Yeah. This is the coalition that's going to build a more stable world. Really? These guys are going to build a more stable world?
Well, dude, you know why they can do this?
I don't think so.
You know why they can do this, right? They can do this because the sheriff is gone.
Yeah.
The United States was the sheriff. The United States, just the thought of pissing off the United States used to scare the shit out of this axis. It doesn't at all anymore because they know that no one's home.
Yeah.
Nobody's home.
They own the guy who's home.
Yeah.
That's the problem. They own
him
completely. Yep. That is the FiveStack today. Thank you very much for being here on this Tuesday edition. And we shall be back tomorrow with special coverage of the Epstein witnesses as they
what time we start?
Victims. It starts at 10:30, but I think we might have to start a little earlier. I know you love the
10?
mornings. Yeah. I don't. Start at 10.
A little coffee, maybe a little croissant.
I'm never, in fully great form at that time of the morning, but I'm going to be okay. It takes me a minute. Normally, I'm writing like intensely at that time, and I'm just like,
we're messing with your schedule. You got a little OCD like me, where you're like, no one can talk to me before 1 o'clock. I'm too busy before 1 o'clock.
I'm not the friendliest guy before 1 p.m. After 1 p.m., jolly as anything. But before, let me do my writing.
I want to meet this angrier version of Zev Shalev tomorrow morning. Now I'm excited. We should start at like 8 a.m., maybe 7.
Oh yeah, really get the grumpy guy. He's not so bad. I don't get really grumpy,
No,
That
but
is
listen, that is the show. Sorry, but I just wanted to remind everybody, the Greatest Heist series, no one is doing better work giving you context and information about why we are where we are. Specifically, nobody other than my friend Zev Shalev. Vicky Ward's done an incredible job. Olga does an incredible job. But as far as the connecting of the dots and the tick and the tack and the toe, please go and subscribe to Zev's Substack, narrative.org today. Go and read his Greatest Heist series. It's truly, truly incredible. And it gives you so much backstory where you sit back after you read one of his Greatest Heist series. I think you're at 8 or 9 now. And you go, okay. All right. Okay. It makes sense. So please go and subscribe to Zev Shalev's Greatest Heist series, a new one coming out tonight. So we'll let you get out of this podcast because I know you get a little antsy when you write. So you go do that. Go and subscribe to mine as well. We've got 50% off again. I've extended that for the month across the board, founding memberships, monthlies, and annual memberships. Across the board. Founders pay once, never pay again. Lock that price in. The entire month of September, you get 50% off your subscriptions as well. And listen, folks, thank you for being here. We're you.
Yes.
We just get an opportunity to talk to you about the things that we discover along the way. That's it. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, buddy.
No, I was just going to say there's so much great stuff on deanblundell.substack.com, including the story that we talked about at the top of the show, the incredible assassination attempt on von der Leyen's plane. So people should check that out. There's also great coverage on, as we have heard throughout the show, about the claims that these the Trump files have been present in Putin's regime for a long time, and they're very compromising for the president, plus all the stuff about Donald Trump's health. It's all there on deanblundell.substack.com. So people should check it out and subscribe. That is the show. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye, all.